The best summer memories are made outside, and LL Bean has the clothing and gear you need to make these memories. Their effortless styles are created for summer spent outside with family and friends. Like hand-sewn boat shoes, coastal cotton sweaters, rugged polos, and, of course, the iconic boat and tote, which has been made right here in Maine since 1944. LL Bean. Be an outsider. Visit llbean.com to learn more.
It's the Paradise Podcast.
I am your host, Ryan Michelle Bethay, with my husband, Sterling.
What's up?
Join us here on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus, where we'll discuss each episode with the cast and crew of Paradise. I'll be getting all the secrets from Dan Fogelman, James Marsden, Shailene Woodley, Julianne Nicholson, and Sterling Kelby-Brown. Woo! Paradise, the official podcast, is now streaming.
And stream Paradise on Hulu and Hulu on Disney Plus.
Wonder-working power in the precious...
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria.
You may wish to adjust the dial. You are currently tuned into the wrong station. Chapter 12. Razor. A wind screamed in off the wastes, lifting shards and snow and dust, slamming to the walls of Bridewell Cald and boiling over, filling the courtyards with a slicing, choking maelstrom that coated the bodies of the newly dead, whitening their blood. The surviving equals hastened into that low stone building at the compound's rear, and there were gunshots in the dark, and screams of gunshot Staatspol silenced quickly by the cold knife. Rowena stuck close to Gim, clinging to his great shadow like a feeder parasite on the flank of an Angarok. A change had come over him. The gnawing thoughts that had bent him in on himself had been dispelled since the equal's unexpected success at the walls of Bridewell. He walked tall now. He had some of that calmness and certainty which Taylor had always embodied. Right up until the moment that the Staatspol took him. "Game, Mankata, get in here." One of Mankata's shooters appeared in the red glow of a handheld flare. She was a big, lean woman with a boxer's broken nose. Everybody called her Queen Cam. Rowena followed as she led them down low steps, past empty kennels and an empty barracks, past the dull crimson of cleared gyms and lavs and showers, where the equals stood, reloading 4 shots by the burning eye of a flare. She stepped over the body of more Staatspol and flinched at the too strong smell of bleach as they passed a series of empty interrogation rooms. Then they were into the offices, an annex of small beige rooms ringed around a central staircase, and an elevator leading down. "In here," said Queen Cam. This office had a light of its own, a leaden green flush that seemed to creep out of the walls, silhouetting a steel desk, dead cop, and overturned chair. There was something heavy and plastic squatting on the desk, facing away from them. Pens and crumpled paper crunched underneath the equals' boots as they came in. You could piece together the scene. A panicked Staatspol desk jockey sweeping cups and paper trays onto the floor so he could haul something heavy and plastic up onto the desk. You could see him scrambling with the cords in the darkness as muffled gunshots thudded through the cement walls. The thing that crouched on the desk began to make a rhythmic ticking sound, and for a moment Rowena thought it might be a bomb. Then Gim turned it around to face them, and they all stared into the depths of a black dial, lit up green. A radio, tied with veins of thick beige wire to a battery pack. A radio, live, powered, and speaking to them through the static of the storm by a series of simple clicks. Chapter 13. War Council. They all stared for a silent moment, not comprehending the Stotspole codes that clicked to them, but understanding all too well their implication. Then Queen Cam shot the radio to pieces. Rowena put her back to the wall and sank. "That's it then," she said. "They're coming." Moncada drummed fingers on the desk. "The storm will slow them. We still have time to get out." "What about the prisoners?" said Queen Cam. "What about Taylor?" Moncada looked at her. "The prison break failed, but we struck a blow and escaped with our lives. That's a win in my book." "Just like that," said Vagrant Child. She'd shown up behind Rowena at the office door. She was wearing Ransack's black bomber, and it smelled of blood. "And all the comrades we've lost here, they just died for nothing?" Moncada turned his eyes toward her in the gloom. "More will die if we stay." But she stared him down. A humorless smile slowly changed the shape of the numbers on her cheeks. "Well, I guess you're not too broken up about some of the losses, are you?" She brushed her fingertips against Ransack's jacket, and they came away black with Ransack's blood. "I'm not happy she's dead, Vagrant," said Moncada. Queen Cam stepped up quietly to back him. "Course you are. You thought she was a problem. Now she's solved." Ignoring Queen Cam, Vagrant stepped forward to press one finger into the old man's sternum. "Well, guess what? Even dead, she's worth more to this movement than you are alive." Moncada's usually relaxed face had tightened. "I'd argue with you, Vagrant, but we're a little short on time right now." He turned to Gim. "Gim, what's your play?" Vagrant turned to the big man, too. "I say we spring the cages and shoot our way out. We came to do something. Let's do it. I don't want to leave with my tail between my legs." "I'm with Moncada," said Queen Cam. "It's too risky to stay, even for Taylor." "Oh, rat shit." "What about you, Reese?" said Vagrant, turning to Rowena. "Ransack was your friend. You want her death to count for something or not?" Then all their eyes were on her. The responsibility felt heavy enough that Rowena could barely breathe. She was a factory girl from Gigmill, here because of a series of accidents. She had no business making life or death choices. Gim was Taylor's right-hand man, she heard herself say. "I'll go with what he thinks is right." And the invocation of Taylor's name was enough to put all eyes back on the big man. He was still looking at that broken radio. Rowena could see the same weight settle on him. But for once, Gim didn't shrink beneath its weight. Instead, he glanced up at Moncada, and for a moment the two men looked at one another. "You've been doing just fine on your own, Gim." But Gim smiled and shook his shaggy head. "I'm a soldier, Moncada. I never wanted to lead. You've been leading." Again, that head shake. "No. I've just been trying to get my captain back." Moncada looked at him for another moment, then looked down, then shook his head and turned, making his way to the door past Vagrant's grinning teeth. "Come on then, Cam," he said over his shoulder. "Let's go and hold these walls, so our comrades can get their leader back." Vagrant Child laughed as Queen Cam shouldered past her. On his way out, Moncada bent down for a moment to murmur something in Rowena's ear. "What are we, Reese?" he asked her. "Taylor's followers? Or his equals?" Chapter 14. Descent. They stood at the brink of the stairwell leading down, and darkness was below them. "Don't worry," said Gim. "We'll find a way out of this. Taylor will think of something." The equals had reloaded, swapped weapons and coats with better gear from the dead. Gim had sent most of his shooters with Moncada to the walls. Now it was him and Vagrant Child, Rowena, Hesper, and Uzarak who faced the long way down. But Gim's craggy face carried a wide and clear expression. They had guns and explosives and a handheld ram. He knew what he was doing now, and his mind was at ease. "Let's go." He took point and led them down that long black stair, piercing darkness with the bright blade of a flashlight. Down, down. Corner after corner turned with smooth, crisp movements. Nobody fired up at them, and when they came to a set of locked steel doors, Gim took the hand-ram off of Hesper and smiled as he felt its heft. 40 pounds were light and nimble in his big, square hands, and he shattered the cold deadbolt with a few sharp swings. Vagrant and Rowena boiled through, rifles steady. But no ambush awaited them. Only the stink of a huge room full of cages, of unwashed bodies rustling in their cells in the dark, and raw sewage sliding down the sluiceways underneath. The 5 of them cleared that warehouse with quick precision, shining lights into cages where chilblained hands went up to shelter milky eyes. The guards had locked themselves into a cement room in one corner of that human warehouse. They huddled out of sight as the Equal shined flashlights through the small, thick panes of laminated glass. Esper, set the explosives. Ujarak, you shoot anyone who tries to stop them. Rowena, I need you on that stairwell leading down. Vagrant, help me cut these locks. The prisoners here were kept in the same make of cage that the Equals had found in the kennels upstairs. Only about a quarter of the cages were filled, their pitiful occupants held in by simple padlocks. This is a prison break, Gim shouted, as he and Vagrant went down the rows with a set of cutters and an angle grinder. Bright sparks lit the reeking dark. You'll find dead stats pull upstairs. Take their coats and weapons. More are coming, and we'll need to fight together if we want to live. Gim? Shouted one of the shrunken figures from its cage. Is that you? It's me, Becker. Murdoch? Gim strode forward and cut the padlock like it was paper. The Equal within was someone Rowena had met once or twice before. He'd once been burly and wide. Now the gray rags hung loose around a hollow frame as Gim helped him free. I thought they killed you, comrade. Becker gave him a haggard grin. Maybe they did. Where's Taylor? The grin faded. They took him down, Becker said. With some of the others, below. He jerked his shabby beard toward the downward stair Rowena covered with a rifle. When she looked down, it looked back up. A cold abyss. Hand me a rifle, Gim, Becker said. I'll eat these others up. Gim pressed his own weapon into the Equal's hands. You sure you don't want to follow us down? In the half-light of flashlights, Becker's wide eyes stared. Not down there, comrade. Not even for Taylor. A shiver crawled between Rowena's shoulders. She steadied her rifle at the dark. That's all right, Gim said. He put a hand on the Equal's shoulder. It's okay, Murdoch. We're going to bring him up. Only a few of the guests in Bridewell Cald were Equals. Some were thieves or criminals, but most were just like anybody else, escaped indents trying to live free, or people taken in for the crime of wrong place, wrong time. But Bridewell Cald had changed them. Bridewell Cald had aligned their interests. And when Hesper blew the hinges off the guardroom doors, they all had the chance to show it. Chapter 15. Desmaterian. Another level, winding down and down the inky stair, with Gim in the lead, and a 6-shot pepper-box repeater cold and chrome and heavy in his fist. But this time, when they came to a steel door at the bottom, they found it unlocked, and it yielded easy on its hinges when Reese and Vagrant surged on through. Beyond the steel, a wide and pillared space, a temple peristyle lit with dim and greenish light. Somewhere a generator softly moaned, belching power through a rat's nest of cables running down the floor and sending grayish billows through a fume hood on the ceiling. Amidst those nests of cables, heavy sluiceways crossed the floor. Some open, others spanned with steel grating rusted through. The channels stank, and most were overgrown with pale slime. But the bundles of wires thrust over and through that slime in their race to the bases of many a metal console, which stood in even rows between the pillars. Each console's back hunched up into a glass cylinder, something like an inverted test tube, 8 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and filled with greenish fluid lit up from the base. The cylinders were full, of course, and the people floating in them weren't really people anymore. The sight of those drifting figures, row upon row, dozens, hundreds, was enough to stop the equals cold. Even Vagrant Child let the barrel of her rifle drop as she stared, slack-jawed at the silent assembly. Rowena found herself floating toward the nearest station. Its specimen hung in the fluid above her, swaying gently. A young man, intubated and serene. By the puckered scars around his thighs and biceps, you could tell they'd sawed his humerus and femurs to extend them. Why? The skin pulled taut across prognathous jaws, his distended face. Were the eyes milky from blindness? The chambered sinuses looked sensitive. Something like a medical chart hung from a hook at thigh height in the console, and Rowena let it come into her hand. Not to read what had been done to the person. Did that matter past a certain point? But to learn a name. Bez, Triz. She let the chart fall, glancing back at Gim and Vagrant. She imagined the look on her face was something like the look on theirs, lost and small, as wide eyes sailed across the green glass forest, searching for, she realized with a shock, Taylor, looking for that warm and thoughtful face, hoping both to find it and not to. Then there came a small and shuffling sound. Rowena's reverie broke, and she snapped the rifle to her cheek, moving swift and smooth among the pillars, freezing, listening, and then lunging around the console to smash a rifle butt into the spine of the man who'd been crawling along out of sight. He went down hard and moaned, and then whimpered as she turned him with her boot and aimed the rifle at his face. "Please!" he gasped. He had sandy hair, blue eyes, and glasses. "Don't hurt me. I'm just a technician. I didn't mean to harm anybody." And yet there were brownish old stains on his lab coat. "We're looking for someone," Reese told him. "Name of Taylor." The man's eyes widened, and he stammered. Vagrant came to stand beside her, iron 4-shot hanging ready in her fist. "You have to understand," he babbled. "I'm just an entry-level tech. Look, my name is Heflin. Jason Heflin. I have a family. I'm only working for Stottspool for the benefits. Gim's voice interrupted, ringing clear among the pillars. "I found him," he called. "He's here." Vagrant Child and Rowena looked at one another. Rowena shrugged and strode down among the pillars to where Gim stood silhouetted, small against a far green light. Behind her, the technician started to say something else, but then Vagrant's pistol thundered. After a few moments of screaming and a few more peals of thunder, silence settled on the peristyle again, and all Rowena could hear were her own footsteps. How far did this chamber stretch? It must be well beyond the walls of Bridewell Cald by now, somewhere excavated deep beneath the frozen wastes above. Gim was waiting at the chamber's farthest reach, where straight walls curved together, forming an apse. He was silhouetted, black against green, with one of those charts hanging limp from his fingers. She kept her eyes down as she came up beside him, not yet wanting to face the source of the green light. On the chart, 6 black letters spelled out a name between Gim's fingers. Taylor. At last, she forced herself to look up. "You're sure?" she whispered after a moment. "You're sure it's him?" Vagrant came up behind them, slotting fresh cartridges into the repeater's breech. Ujarak and Hesper stood in silence a few feet off. "I could never mistake that face," Gim said. Framed by the apse, one glass cylinder stood apart from all the others. It soared 15 feet toward the damp, cracked ceiling. Its diameter was wider than Rowena's outstretched arms. The glow that seeped through its green fluids was bright enough to warm her face. At first glance, there was no way you could have guessed the body floating there belonged to Taylor. It was wide and muscular, banded with broad scales across its thorax. Currents in the lymph of the tank rippled pale feathers and fur. Those arms were still Taylor's. She'd sometimes glimpse those tattoos beneath his sleeves when he reached down to tie his boots or up to steady the aim of a rifle. He'd always tried to hide those marks of indenture, unlike Ransack, who'd flaunted hers. But the arms were bare now, heavier and longer, though still dwarfed by the swollen trunk of his body. The fingernails had thickened, darkened into claws. But that was just the beginning of what they'd done to him. The head, which streamed on its long, thick neck, was no longer human. It was wide and pointed, frilled by a crown of feathered spines. The eyes were pearly spheres a handspan wide. Only Taylor's face remained, set like a vestigial organ in the midst of that broad, draconic snout. His eyes stared vacant from scales and fur. His mouth was parted slightly with despair. But it was Taylor's face lodged into the creature's head. She'd seen those crow's feet crinkle with laughter, that brow furrow with thought. She knew by heart the numbers on his cheek. All 5 of the equals stared for a long time. Then Rowena said, "My God, I was right. We shouldn't have come." Gim threw down the chart. "You're wrong. It's still him. We can get him back." Somewhere distant and above, a low boom echoed through the bedrock. Artillery? Stotts pulled mustard fast. Vagrant sneered. Rowena stared out at the forest of cylinders, meeting Hesper and Uzarak's eye. Last chance. If the prison wasn't sealed already, it would be soon. "Gim," Rowena began. "It won't be Taylor anymore." He looked at her with a childlike expression on his haggard face. His eyes were wide and dark and vulnerable. Then, without saying anything, he raised the repeater and emptied all 6 barrels into the glass. Chapter 16. Apotheosis. The shots echoed in the silent hole, each one landing like a hammer on the eardrums. Bullets tore through the cylinder, leaving trails in the greenish gel, which began to spurt through the bullet holes, gasping as it came. Then the glass splintered. Splinters thickened into cracks. Then the cylinder burst. The equals scattered as the green tide crashed down, bearing shards of glass and scraps of wire toward them. The great shape of Taylor collapsed, striking the floor with an impact that rattled nearby cylinders in their housing. "Taylor!" Gim ran forward, slipping in the green mire, and cutting himself on broken glass as he scrambled to his knees by Taylor's side. He put his hands beneath the heavy, scaled neck and tried to raise the massive head. Wide, milky eyes just stared at the ceiling, while the black maw wheezed for air, and the vestigial face worked its bluish lips. Somewhere in the distance, artillery boomed. "Come back to us!" Gim's voice was thick. "We need you, Taylor." Then, the eyes of that vestigial face opened, and the blue lips began to moan. At the same time, the creature's great pearlescent eyes began to roll, and a sharp black tongue slipped out between fanged jaws, and with a deep hiss, the great white body righted itself. Gim scrambled back, his face gone pale, but a clawed hand shot forward and pinned him to the floor. Fingers wider than his clavicles dug in, and he shouted, struggling as the dragon turned, and its great white eyes beheld him, and it hissed, "Taylor! Taylor, it's me!" But the great frilled head came down, and black jaws drew shut with a crunch. "Gim!" Rowena shouted. Vagrant raised a blazing 4-shot, and red light and green light gleamed from the chrome. But quicker than a rat, the huge beast whirled, plunging deep into the field of cylinders. Bullets, cracked glass, and green burst forth as Hesper, Uzarak, and Reese began to fire too. But then it was back upon them, bursting through consoles and scattering pale forms as it fell onto Uzarak, destroying him. Then Hesper threw aside his gun and ran, while Vagrant dropped an empty 4-shot just to draw another. Rounds burst the chests and skulls of floating figures. Green tides swamped the floor as Taylor whirled again and scuttled from the muzzle fire. Rowena raised her rifle, snap, breathe, squeeze the trigger, just like Taylor had taught. But her bullet barely drew blood. Green, as it ripped through his plated flesh. "The stairs," she shouted. "Get to the stairs!" But Taylor was between them and the exit now, and somewhere in the field of floating tanks, Hesper was screaming as the monster disemboweled him. Rowena's hands were leaden on the turnbolt as she cleared a casing, drove the next cartridge home. Across from her, Vagrant moved in parallel along the wall. Then the moire of pillars snapped into clean rows. She found the great, pale eyes were facing her. She fired, blind, and leaped aside as Taylor charged, his shoulder clipping her as Vagrant's pistol thundered at his flank. Everything blurred. Everything was white light, spitting pain, and broken glass. Then she crashed down into an open culvert. Vacuum replaced the air in her lungs. She gasped at the reek of slime from flushed-out cylinders. She lurched to hands and knees, and bones ground broken inside her. One ankle, one rib, or maybe two. She lurched down the culvert, wheezing with pain and fear as somewhere behind her, Vagrant screamed in rage, firing and firing as Taylor darted through the pillars. A black drain yawned ahead of Rowena. She dragged herself toward it desperately. Vagrant was still shouting, but the repeater's hammer had clicked silent, and Taylor's hiss was building to a roar. Faster and faster Rowena crawled, feeling cracks widen in her ribs with every reach and pull. She was almost at the drain, but Vagrant's scream had cut off sharply, and shards of glass were chiming from the stone as Taylor thrashed her body here and there. Just let me go, Rowena thought. But then she felt the attention of those huge white eyes like the heat of a spotlight between her shoulder blades. And she forced herself to her feet, forced herself to run on that broken ankle through slime as Taylor surged toward her in a rush of feathers, scales, and broken glass. A hiss boiled up behind her, and she threw herself toward the open entrance of the drain. Darkness engulfed her as the frilled head and jaws thrashed and snapped mere inches behind, as black nails tore the frayed edges of her coat. She fell. The last thing she saw as she looked back in the dark were two great pale eyes, and between them, Taylor's mournful face, mouthing her name. Chapter 17. Wagon. A red brick city rising from the frozen wastes, from the ice fields and bergschrunds and bare blasted peaks of stone. In sun now, the gleam of circumzenith scintillating across iron derricks and rust-stained buttresses and turbines, across the permafrost and virga reaching down like fingers of a strange and living god. In sun, now, for the monoliths of cloud have crumbled, and the razor winds have raced on past the rim of sunset into lands beyond the reach of human memory. In Airkirk and Rathnelly, the growlers trawl out of their bunker doors, fitted with heavy plows, to begin the work of clearing out the city. In Cokes, the workers toil through neck-high snow, in black streams with heavy heads toward the factories, belching smoke already. In Shambleyard, the tailing ponds run steaming red, melting the snow into little swirling bergs. In all parts of the city, Stadspoles swarm, ripping past on marmots or crawling through the snow in heavy armor. Their white wool serge gleams bright in the morning sun. Their rifles all shine polished black. It's a show of force. The storm is broken, and the state returns. At Cross Dishonest, workers chisel out the damaged lines from hardened foam. At Bridewell Cald, excavators sift the bodies from the famous prison's shattered walls and smoking ruin. A crowd is gathered, craning necks and muttering in quiet tones. A line of Stotspole tries to drive them off, but they're too many and too peaceful. And deep down, behind their masks and goggled helms, the officers are scared. They've been hit. They've been hurt. Their fortress of fear has fallen. Inside, a contractor drags one snarling, red-mouthed body through the snow. With the help of a fellow worker, he tosses it on the pile, where it lands beside the body of an older man, white-haired and smiling peaceably. They'll all be burned. No sense, the stadtholders think, in Council House at Harrison Pool, in making their graves a shrine for the equals and other assorted scum. They don't realize, of course, that ruined Bridewell is that shrine. In fortress depths, that thing which was once Taylor rages still, among the broken glass and bodies, eating what's left of the Stadtpol team sent down to kill him. And elsewhere in the city, struggles simmer on. The comrades of Leadheaven and the Freightings have already heard the news. They're fired by it and crouching over city maps. Up in Airkirk, students plan a protest march. Out at Pitch Stake, the riggers plan a wildcat strike. And outside the city, a lone figure staggers on across the salt scar. She's covered in blood and greenish slime and black and silver hoarfrost now. She has a broken arm to join her ankle and her ribs. She thinks she's going to lose a couple toes. But the outskirts are in sight. The old abandoned smokestacks of the Blackening District. Which are home. That's right. Home. She's not a gig mill girl anymore. She's not afraid. She doesn't need a hero or a leader. She doesn't need someone to tell her what comes next, because the movement is inside her now. Gim, Moncada, Taylor, Ransack and Vagrant too. She can figure it out. Whatever comes next, she can figure it out. The Wrong Station is made possible with the generous support of our listeners on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/thewrongstation for bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes content, ad-free listening, and additional goodies celebrating our decade of dread. This week's episode, Action Crisis White Part 2, was written by Alexander Saxton and performed by Anthony Botelho. Thank you to Catherine, Jamin Jang, Frilly, Alex Lashansky, Eon, and a very special thanks to Taylor, Queen Cam, Kurt Hooper, Jason Heflin, and Triz Bez for helping us keep the lights, well, off. The Wrong Station is co-produced by Alexander Saxton, Anthony Botelho, and Jacob Duarte Spiel, with music composed and performed by Alon Citrin, and arranged for the viola and performed by Viola Schmidt. You can follow us on social media at The Wrong Station, or email us at thewrongstation@gmail.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.